All right, welcome back to Chapter 7. We're going to carry on with looking at a new concept here called, it's a looping structure called Foreach. And it's geared, the Foreach repetition structure is used a lot when we're dealing with a collection or an array, which is a type of collection of information. We have a sequential collection. So we have looked at this one in the past when we were looking at looping structures, but this is actually the fourth way that we can loop inside of C# to this point. So if you have a look at the syntax, what we're doing here is we're going to say let's loop for each really element within the collection is what they're saying here. So for each, and then what we're going to do is identify the type that we're going to use, and then we're going to give it a variable name in the collection itself, in the array in this case. Right here, we're going to perform that as many times as there are elements in the array. So the blue one there is the type, and then the variable name. In is just a reserved word. It's kind of a keyword you need in there, and then the name of the variable in that particular array. So it's kind of a simple way of looping through an array. So when you do have an array, it's common to use either the for or the Foreach method. So here's what it would look like in a practical example. Here's an instance of an array. It's an integer array with 3 elements. They call it numbers. So we want to loop through and display all the values, all the variables inside there. So we're going to use this Foreach method. So it is an int. We have to declare it as that type. We're going to give it a name here called val. So what is, I guess, the value in the numbers array. So what we're going to do here is simply take what is the value of that first one. So it's going to go for each one. So it's going to go for the first, which would be 3, convert it to a string and output. So there'll be a message box pop up says 3. There'll be a message box pops up with 6 and a message box with a 9. And it's going to loop through and it's going to stop because it only loops for each element in that particular collection. All right, now we're going to have a look at how we can integrate a couple of new concepts that we've learned together. So in this first line here, you can see that we're going to create an instance of an array called numbers, and we're going to load it with 5 numbers here, 10 through 50. And then we're going to actually write these numbers into a file. And so we're going to need to use or create an instance of this stream writer class here, and we're going to call it the output file. So that output file right here is now going to contain, or we're going to create the text, and we're going to call it, the name of the file is going to be called values.txt. So this is very familiar to what we've been working on in previous chapters in this one here by creating an object in the memory. And this is actually broken down into 2 parts, but I could have probably taken this line right here and moved it up here. It's probably what I should have done. All right, now in this case here we're going to just use a for repetition structure, although we could have used a for each. So let's take a look at how that's working. So we're going to loop starting at 0 as long as the index or the subscript is less than the length of the array. Now you see that length property popping up again here because we're not sure, although I could have put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I could have actually just said as long as it's less than 5. But by putting this in, we're guaranteed that that's the exact number if we don't count it right. Or maybe this is 100 lines or whatever, we don't want to count them. All right, and then from there, we're going to take the numbers, the first one, so that's number 0, and we're going to write it to that output file. So we're going to write in 10 into that file. And then we're going to loop. We're going to write in 20, loop 30, 40, 50. We're going to loop until we're done. And then finally, of course, we're going to make sure that we close that object that's in memory so we don't create any problems with file opening, exception handling errors, things like that. All right, so there's an example of using an array with a repetition, loading the information into a text file. Kind of a good example there.